Hello everybody, and welcome to video number 2 of my GregTech tutorial series. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the way GregTech spawns ores that I started talking about a bit in the last video. So I'm in a world here that was originally a super flat world that went up to Y level 230 or so. And then I went into MC Edit and deleted everything that was not an ore. And this is what I got left with. So as you can see the two different types of GregTech ores. You can see these small veins of various different metals, coal, lead down here, and there are also a bunch that are gems, like this here is a ruby ore, and you have the majority of gems which can only be obtained through these small ores. Now, small ores generate one by one. They are height dependent, as are these larger veins, and they spawn completely independently of anything else. All that matters is the height. When you mine these, you don't actually get the ore block. You get a dust or a crushed ore like that. Sometimes you also get the dust like that of the stone that it was spawned in. So if it's regular stone, it's stone dust. If it's granite dust, and so on and so forth. Now, the other type of ore is this large mix vein. Now, the mix veins, as they're called, actually consist of several different ores. So this here is a gold vein. It consists of mostly magnetite ore. It's got a bunch of gold scattered throughout, and it's got vanadium magnetite mostly in the middle. Now, the way and the position, like the actual location that these ore blocks are generated, is very systematic, and it can actually be found in the config files or on the GregTech pages on the FTB wiki. So here you can see an example of the three different layers of ores. So the primary layer is the top three layers of the ore vein, and the primary ore spawns in just those three layers, nowhere else in the vein. The secondary layer is this bottom part, the bottom three blocks. And that ore spawns only in those bottom blocks, nowhere else. And then you have the sporadically in-between layer, which for this ore is sapphire, for this vein, sorry. And it spawns in these middle three blocks. So there's some overlap with the primary and the secondary layer, but it does not go beyond that. Now your last layer is referred to the sporadically around layer, and in this case, it's green sapphire ore. And this spawns anywhere in the vein, but it is the rarest ore that you can find in any particular vein. So it spawns, it can spawn all the way up here, it can spawn in the middle, it can spawn at the bottom. It doesn't care about height. It spawns anywhere you want, but it's relatively rare compared to other ores. Here's another example. So you can see iron being the secondary layer, chalcopyrite being the top layer, regular pyrite in the middle, and copper sort of scattered throughout. Now these veins each have a different property that varies between the different types of veins. One of these is size. So if you look at this vein, this golden magnetite vein, you can actually see it's really big. It's about 3 chunks across. If we look at the start over here, and then the end over here, that's about 48 blocks from side to side. But if we jump down here, we can see this other vein. This is an emerald, beryllium, and thorium vein. And it is considerably smaller than the vein we saw up there. Same with this adjacent vein of, this is I think bastnasite and neodymium and monazite. It's about the same size as this other vein, and both are much smaller than the magnetite vein we saw up there. You can find out the actual sizes in the config files for GregTech or on the FTB wiki page for GregTech ore spawning. Another way they differ is the density of the vein. So when you look at this vein, it looks pretty dense, but there's a lot of holes in them, and when you remove the stone, you can almost play this as a dropper map where you try to fall down the middle. But some veins are much, much more dense. So if we look at this lignite vein, it's practically completely solid. There are a couple of holes like that we might see through, but other than that, it's nearly solid lignite all the way through. There aren't many stone blocks, or in this case, air blocks. Now, not all veins are unique in the metals that they produce. So that up there is a golden magnetite vein. Now, magnetite is an ore of iron. You can get iron from it. But this thing here is also an iron vein. This is banded iron ore, brown limonite, and yellow limonite. All of these can give you iron when you process them. So if you see it say iron ore somewhere, like on a wiki page, that isn't necessarily referring to this, or even to that. It's actually more likely referring to a different type of vein that consists of just magnetite and iron ore, no gold. So don't get confused about that. Just because it's called one thing doesn't mean that it is necessarily a vein that produces that metal, because that metal might come from other veins as well. Now, one thing I mentioned is that this here is a vein of emerald ore. Emerald ore is the only vanilla ore that isn't completely overridden by GregTech generation. Now, GregTech does spawn its own emerald ore, but the regular vanilla Minecraft emerald ore does spawn in extreme hills biomes. It is the only ore that does spawn in extreme hills biomes. It's the only, or sorry, I should say it's the only ore that only spawns in extreme hills, and it's the only ore that's biome dependent. All of these other ores are completely independent of biomes. They're dependent on two things, the height and the dimension they're in. Now here's an ore that only spawns in the nether, and that's nether quartz ore. Now this isn't your vanilla nether quartz ore, it's GregTech quartz ore, and you can see it drops the block item, not the actual quartz item, and it doesn't spawn in smaller chunks like the vanilla quartz does. It spawns in these giant veins like the rest of GregTech ores do. Now, ores don't spawn in only one dimension necessarily. Some do. Some spawn in just the overworld, or nether quartz, as you might expect, spawns in just the nether. But there are ores that spawn in multiple dimensions. Now, that includes these small ores. So, let's see, what's this? This is silver ore and sulfur. We found those in the overworld, but they spawn here too. Now, for the vast majority of these ores, they spawn at the same rate in both the overworld and nether. The exception is sulfur, which spawns more in the nether. Here we can see a vein that we saw in the overworld. So this is limonite, yellow limonite. There's some brown limonite up there, I think. Here it is, and we saw that in the overworld, but here it is in the nether too, so it's not just exclusive to one dimension. Now, despite the fact that they spawn in equal rates in these different dimensions, it might still be better to come to the nether to look for it, and that's because the nether is more open, and you can see the veins more easily. I highly recommend actually looking for redstone in the nether, as long as you try to keep kind of low down at the same altitude that redstone spawns in the overworld. And just keep an eye out for the redstone, the red, brownish red ore that you might see in that vein. Ah, here it is, redstone ore, and there's some cinnabar there too. So it might be kind of hard to spot, just like iron or tin are hard to spot in the overworld, because it blends in so well with the netherrack, you can hardly tell. But that's just another reason to get a texture pack for GregTech. It makes things a lot easier to spot. But if you want the challenge, then by all means, just use these default textures. So I'm back in the exact same world as before, except before I deleted the red and black granite. So as you may know, GregTech spawns red and black granite in the worlds. And they can come in pretty gigantic veins, like this one down here. But up there, you could see a really small one here, so to vary in size. You actually need a pretty strong pickaxe to mine these, so they can be kind of a pain in the beginning, especially if you see a vein you really need. Let's see, I was dying for some bismuth. I can't get it, because it's in granite. Alright, well anyway, that's all I wanted to show. So that's all for this video. I hope it was helpful. Again, if you have any feedback, suggestions, or questions, leave them below and I'll get back to you on them. Thanks for watching.